The Himba, also known as Himba and plural Himba, are an ethnic group residing primarily in northern Namibia, within the Kunene region, formerly known as Kayakoland, and extending across the Kunene River into southern Angola. Their estimated population is around 50,000 individuals. The Himba's lifestyle is marked by semi-nomadic pastoralism, which means they move periodically to adapt to environmental conditions, while also maintaining base homesteads where they cultivate crops. The Himba are culturally distinct from the Herrero people, despite sharing linguistic similarities. They speak ochre Himba, a dialect of the Herrero language, which is part of the Bantu branch of the Niger-Congo language family. This linguistic connection reflects a broader cultural heritage while still highlighting their unique identity. However, the Himba, there are small groups of Ova-Twa, who are considered part of the Himba tribal structure but differ in their way of life as hunter-gatherers. The Ova-Twa's inclusion underscores the Ova-Himba's complex social and cultural fabric, which accommodates various subsistence strategies within their broader tribal identity. The semi-nomadic nature of the Ova-Himba means that while they have established base homesteads for growing crops, their movements are dictated by seasonal rainfall and access to water sources. This adaptability is essential for their survival in the arid environment they inhabit. The Himba's ability to blend settled agriculture with pastoral mobility reflects their resourcefulness and deep understanding of their environment. Due to the harsh desert climate and their isolation from external influences, the Ova-Himba have managed to preserve much of their traditional lifestyle. Living in one of the most extreme environments on Earth, their society is intricately structured around a system of bilateral descent, which has proven crucial for their survival and cultural continuity. In the Ova-Himba society, each individual is connected to two clans, one through their father, known as the Patriclan or Aruzo, and another through their mother, referred to as the Matriclan or Yanda. This dual clan affiliation shapes their social organization and inheritance practices. Leadership within the Himba clans is typically held by the eldest male, who assumes responsibility for guiding and managing clan affairs. Sons remain within their father's clan, while daughters, upon marrying, move to live with their husband's clan. This arrangement helps maintain social and economic stability within the community. Inheritance of wealth among the Ova-Himba deviates from the typical patrilineal norms seen in many societies. Instead, it follows the matriclan system. This means that a son does not inherit cattle from his father but from his maternal uncle. This unique approach to inheritance ensures that wealth is distributed in a way that supports the extended family network on both sides. Alongside the distribution of material wealth, the Ova-Himba also emphasize moral obligations within their tribal structure. When a person passes away, the community evaluates the well-being of those left behind, such as orphans and widows, ensuring they receive the necessary support. Access to vital resources, including water points and pastures, is another important aspect of the Ova-Himba's inheritance structure. These resources are crucial for the sustenance of their livestock and, consequently, their way of life. The allocation and management of these resources are closely tied to the clan system, reflecting the Ova-Himba's understanding of resource distribution and communal responsibility. The Himba people's history goes back hundreds of years and is intertwined with the history of the Herrero people. Both the Himba and the Herrero trace their origins to the Great Lakes region of East Africa. Around the 16th century, these groups began a long migration, heading south in search of new lands to graze their cattle and settle. Centuries ago, the Himba people began a remarkable migration from the Great Lakes region of Africa to northern Namibia. Driven by the quest for more fertile grazing lands for their cattle, this journey was both arduous and transformative. As they moved south, they navigated through diverse terrains, including verdant areas and challenging deserts. The Himba faced numerous obstacles such as water shortages and extreme temperatures. Their expertise in cattle herding and deep understanding of survival strategies were crucial in overcoming these hardships. Settling in the arid landscape of Namibia, they adapted their practices to the new environment, establishing a resilient community that has maintained its traditional lifestyle to this day. The Himba migrated from the Great Lakes region to northern Namibia primarily in search of better grazing lands for their cattle, which are vital to their livelihood. Their original lands were becoming increasingly difficult for herding due to environmental changes and overgrazing. The journey to Namibia was arduous, marked by harsh desert landscapes, limited water sources, and extreme temperatures. The Himba faced these challenges with resilience, relying on their extensive knowledge of herding and survival skills. Their ability to adapt to the new, arid environment allowed them to thrive and establish a strong community in northern Namibia, where they have continued to uphold their traditional way of life. After arriving in northern Namibia, the Himba faced the challenge of adapting to a harsh desert environment. They built their homes, called kraals, using locally available materials like mud, cow dung, and wood. These materials were effective in insulating their homes from the extreme desert heat and providing protection against the elements. To manage the scarce water resources, the Himba developed techniques for efficient water use, including digging wells and managing their cattle's grazing patterns to avoid overuse of limited vegetation. Their deep knowledge of cattle herding helped them adapt their practices to ensure their herds thrived in the dry conditions. This reliance on cattle dictates their semi-nomadic lifestyle, requiring them to move periodically to find new pastures and avoid overgrazing in one area. Their traditional knowledge and adaptive practices enable them to navigate the challenges of the desert, maintaining their herd's health and their own way of life in the arid environment. Through this dynamic and adaptive approach, the Himba have managed to thrive in northern Namibia, preserving their cultural heritage while effectively responding to the demands of their environment. The Himba and the Herrero people share a deep historical connection. Both tribes originated from the same ancestors and migrated from the Great Lakes region of Africa. While they share many cultural traits, such as their reliance on cattle and a rich tradition of herding, the two groups have taken different paths over time. The Herrero adopted a more modern way of life, influenced by European settlers, which is reflected in their clothing and interactions with the outside world. The Himba, on the other hand, have preserved their traditional practices, such as wearing red ochre on their skin and hair. Despite these differences, the Himba and Herrero maintain a close bond. They often engage in trade, social interactions, and cultural ceremonies, reinforcing their shared heritage and mutual respect. This relationship highlights the enduring connection between the two tribes, even as they navigate different cultural paths. The Himba and Herrero share a common ancestry. Over time they evolved into distinct groups. Their divergence began during the late 19th century when European settlers arrived in the region. The Herrero, who had settled in more accessible areas, were significantly influenced by these settlers. They adopted Western-style clothing, customs, and even aspects of the colonial economy, such as cattle trading with the Europeans. The Himba, on the other hand, chose to remain more isolated in the remote, arid regions of northern Namibia. This allowed them to retain their traditional semi-nomadic lifestyle, relying on cattle herding and maintaining their distinctive customs, such as using red ochre to cover their skin and hair. German colonization of what is now Namibia began in 1884, when the region was claimed as part of the German Empire, establishing what was called German South-West Africa. This period of colonial rule had devastating consequences for the indigenous populations, particularly the Herero and Namaqua peoples. Under German control, the Herero, who were skilled cattle herders and landowners, faced increasing pressure from settlers who sought to take their land for farming and resource extraction. By the late 19th century, tensions had reached a breaking point. German settlers, backed by the military, forcibly took control of large portions of land, and the indigenous population was subjected to brutal policies aimed at displacing them from their ancestral territories. The Herero people resisted this encroachment on their way of life, and by 1904, tensions erupted into open conflict. The Herero, under Chief Samuel Herrero, launched a rebellion against German rule. In response, the German Empire deployed a military campaign under General Lothar von Trotha, whose response was swift and brutal. Von Trotha issued what became known as the extermination order, directing his troops to kill any Herero they encountered. Thousands of Herero were slaughtered, and survivors were driven into the Omahique Desert, where they were left to die of thirst and starvation. This marked the beginning of what would later be known as the Herero and Namaqua Genocide. The Namaqua people, who had also resisted German rule, were subjected to the same atrocities. Over 80% of the Herero population, roughly 65,000 people, were wiped out, along with nearly 50% of the Namaqua. The genocide devastated these communities, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and trauma. In addition to the loss of life, the Herero and Namaqua were stripped of their land, cattle, and resources. Many were imprisoned in concentration camps, where they faced forced labor, starvation, and harsh conditions. Women and children were not spared. They, too, were subjected to unimaginable cruelty, including sexual violence and exploitation by the colonial forces. The long-term effects of German colonization and the genocide are still felt in Namibia today. After World War I, the region became a mandate of South Africa, but the land taken from the Herero and Namaqua was never fully returned. To this day, land ownership remains a contentious issue, with descendants of the survivors continuing to seek justice and reparations for the atrocities their ancestors endured. The genocide also left deep cultural scars. The Herero and Namaqua communities were not only decimated but also stripped of their traditional way of life. Many of their practices, languages, and customs were suppressed by the colonial authorities. They have preserved many of their traditions and continue to fight for recognition of their suffering and the restoration of their rights. Throughout both German and later South African colonization of Namibia, the Himba people managed to remain relatively isolated, safeguarding their way of life. One of the key factors in their ability to stay detached from colonial influence was their remote location in the arid Kunene region, far from the centers of colonial control. While other tribes were more directly impacted by colonizers, the Himba's semi-nomadic lifestyle and the harsh, unforgiving environment made it difficult for outsiders to penetrate their communities. Colonial governments were primarily interested in fertile lands, resources, and easily accessible regions, meaning that the Himba's desert homeland was often overlooked. As a result, the Himba had limited direct contact with colonizers, allowing them to continue herding cattle, following traditional spiritual practices, and passing down their cultural heritage largely unchanged. Even after Namibia gained independence in 1990, the Himba maintained a strong attachment to their customs. Unlike many other groups who adopted Western clothing, the Himba continue to wear traditional attire, apply red ochre to their skin, and live in small, close-knit communities. Their isolation has also helped them resist the pressures of modernization, preserving their language, rituals, and social structure. By remaining largely disconnected from the influences of both colonial and modern times, the Himba have preserved their rich cultural identity, continuing to pass down their knowledge and traditions from one generation to the next. In recent decades, the Himba people have experienced increasing exposure to the modern world, mainly through tourism and development projects. While this has brought some benefits, such as economic opportunities and access to better healthcare and education, it has also posed a significant threat to their traditional way of life. Tourism has become an important source of income for the Himba, as visitors are fascinated by their unique culture and traditions. Many Himba people sell handmade crafts, give tours of their villages, and perform traditional dances for tourists. This income helps them sustain their communities, especially during times of drought when their livestock are at risk. However, the growing presence of tourists has also brought challenges. Some younger Himba are starting to abandon their traditional attire in favor of Western clothing, and the influence of modern technology is gradually changing their values and lifestyles. The pressure to modernize is creating a divide between generations, with some elders fearing that the younger Himba will lose touch with their cultural roots. The red ochre that covers the skin of Himba women is one of the most recognizable aspects of their culture. This red paste, known as ajais, is made from a mixture of crushed ochre stones and butter or animal fat, sometimes with added aromatic herbs. The ochre gives their skin a deep red color, which holds both cultural and practical significance. Culturally, the red ochre is a symbol of beauty for Himba women. It is applied to the skin, hair, and even their clothing. The Himba believe that the red color represents earth and blood, which are tied to life and fertility. By covering themselves in ochre, they connect to their ancestors and their land, preserving a tradition that has been passed down through generations. Practically, the ochre also serves an important function. Living in the harsh desert climate, the Himba use the ochre to protect their skin from the blazing sun and dry winds. It acts as a natural sunscreen, shielding them from ultraviolet rays while keeping their skin moisturized in the arid conditions. This daily ritual is not just about appearance, but survival in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. The red ochre that covers the skin of Himba women is one of the most recognizable aspects of their culture. This red paste, known as ajais, is made from a mixture of crushed ochre stones and butter or animal fat, sometimes with added aromatic herbs. The ochre gives their skin a deep red color, which holds both cultural and practical significance. Culturally, the red ochre is a symbol of beauty for Himba women. It is applied to the skin, hair, and even their clothing. The Himba believe that the red color represents earth and blood, which are tied to life and fertility. By covering themselves in ochre, they connect to their ancestors and their land, preserving a tradition that has been passed down through generations. Practically, the ochre also serves an important function. Living in the harsh desert climate, the Himba use the ochre to protect their skin from the blazing sun and dry winds. It acts as a natural sunscreen, shielding them from ultraviolet rays while keeping their skin moisturized in the arid conditions. One of the most striking features of the Himba people is their unique and elaborate hairstyles. For the Himba, hair is not just for style, it's deeply connected to their age, social status, and personal identity. Each hairstyle tells a story about the person wearing it, from their stage in life to their place within the community. For young girls, their hair is often styled in simple braids or plaits that fall forward, covering their faces. As they grow older, the hairstyle changes to reflect their maturity. When a Himba girl reaches puberty, her braids are thickened and infused with the red ochre that defines so much of Himba beauty. The transition of hairstyles marks her readiness for womanhood and marriage. Himba men also follow traditional hairstyles. Young boys typically wear two braids that fall to the back, while adult men often shave their heads after marriage, sometimes leaving a single braid as a sign of their status. Elders in the community often sport the most intricate hairstyles, symbolizing their wisdom and respected position. These hairstyles are more than just for appearance, they are an important part of the Himba's cultural and personal identity. They symbolize the connection between generations and help maintain the Himba's link to their ancestors, ensuring their traditions are passed down through time. The Himba people are known not only for their unique hairstyles but also for their stunning jewelry and accessories. These pieces are much more than decorative, they hold deep meaning, symbolizing everything from family ties to wealth and social status. Himba women wear a variety of jewelry made from materials such as shells, beads, leather, and metal. One of the most important pieces is the ohumba, a large shell necklace worn by women. This necklace is a symbol of wealth and is often passed down through generations, signifying family heritage and connection. The women also wear copper or metal bracelets and anklets, which are often gifted by family members or husbands as a sign of care and commitment. These bracelets and anklets are not only symbols of beauty but also act as a form of protection, shielding the wearer from harm and misfortune. Men also wear traditional jewelry, though their adornments are usually simpler, often consisting of leather belts or necklaces with small metal ornaments. For both men and women, jewelry is a way to express their social standing and is deeply tied to their identity within the community. Beaded hair accessories and headpieces are also popular, especially among women. These intricate adornments are often linked to their marital status or the number of children they have. For the Himba, each piece of jewelry serves not only to beautify but also to communicate their life story and role within the tribe. For the Himba people, clothing, body paint, and adornments are not just a matter of personal style, they carry deep cultural and spiritual significance, especially during rituals and ceremonies. Each piece of clothing and every bit of body paint serves a purpose, representing the Himba's connection to their ancestors and their place in the community. During important ceremonies, like weddings or coming-of-age rituals, Himba women wear traditional clothing made from softened animal skins, often dyed with ochre and adorned with beads. The red ochre, which is a mixture of butterfat and crushed ochre stone, not only protects their skin from the harsh sun but also symbolizes the earth and their bond with nature. Men also play a significant role in these rituals, donning special garments and painting their bodies with symbolic patterns. These markings often represent the wearer's role in the ceremony or their connection to the spiritual world. Each design tells a story, linking the individual to the past and honoring the ancestors. These traditions are passed down through generations, with elders teaching the younger members of the community how to prepare for and participate in these sacred rituals. The use of specific clothing, body paint, and adornments is an essential part of keeping the Himba culture alive, ensuring that each generation remains connected to their roots. Through their rituals, the Himba celebrate life, honor their ancestors, and preserve the wisdom of their people. Their clothing, body paint, and jewelry serve as visual reminders of the values and beliefs that have shaped their identity for centuries. The Himba people's daily life is a delicate balance between tradition and survival in one of the harshest climates on Earth. The village is made up of huts, carefully constructed using a mixture of mud, sticks, and thatch. These huts provide much-needed shelter from the scorching sun and the dry winds that sweep across the land. At the heart of the village lies the ochre, or sacred fire, which holds deep spiritual significance. This fire burns continuously, symbolizing the connection between the living and their ancestors. The Himba's way of life revolves around community. Families gather around the fire to share stories, resolve issues, and perform rituals that keep them connected to their ancestors. The fire represents the village's spiritual center, and its warmth draws the people together, serving as a constant reminder of their heritage. Daily life in the village is both practical and deeply rooted in tradition. The men, women, and children all have their roles, contributing to the well-being of the community. From tending livestock to preparing food, each task is performed with respect for their culture and the land they call home. In the arid regions where the Himba live, water is one of the most precious resources. Every day, Himba women embark on long journeys to fetch water from distant wells or waterholes. This is no easy task, as these water sources are often miles away from their villages. Carrying large, heavy containers on their heads, the women show incredible strength and endurance. These containers, often made from animal skins or plastic, can weigh up to 20 liters when full. Despite the challenging conditions, the Himba women have mastered this skill, balancing the loads effortlessly while walking across the hot, dry land. At the waterholes, the women gather and fill their containers with the precious liquid. This is not only a necessity for survival but also a moment for social connection. They exchange stories, share advice, and strengthen the bonds that hold the community together. Once the containers are filled, the journey back begins. Water is used sparingly in the Himba village, and every drop is treasured. The effort it takes to collect it highlights the importance of water conservation in this harsh environment. Through their daily efforts, the Himba women ensure that their families and livestock have enough water to survive in this unforgiving landscape. In the Himba village, food preparation is a central part of daily life, and one of the most important tasks is grinding maize. This staple food provides nourishment for the entire family and is prepared by the women using traditional methods passed down through generations. The process begins with dried maize kernels, which are poured onto a flat grinding stone. Using a smaller, round stone, the women grind the kernels into a fine powder. This requires strength and rhythm, and the repetitive motion has been perfected over time. As the powder forms, the women occasionally pause to sift through the ground maize, ensuring a consistent texture. This maize flour will later be used to make porridge, a key part of the Himba diet. Food preparation in the Himba village is more than just a task, it's a communal activity. Women gather to grind maize, cook, and share stories, strengthening their bonds while providing for their families. For the Himba, cattle are more than just livestock, they are a vital part of their culture and economy. Herding cattle is one of the most important daily tasks for Himba men, who ensure the health and safety of their herds as they journey through the challenging Namibian landscape. At dawn, the men rise to lead their cattle to fresh grazing pastures. The arid environment offers little vegetation, so the men must guide the herd across long distances, relying on their deep understanding of the land to find food and water for their animals. Using long sticks to direct their movement, the men skillfully manage the cattle, ensuring they stay together as they move. The bond between the herdsmen and their cattle is strong, each animal is carefully watched over and nurtured, as cattle represent wealth, status, and security for the Himba people. During grazing, the men rest in the shade, always keeping a watchful eye on their herd. They know that the survival of the cattle is essential to the survival of their families, and through their care and expertise, they ensure the future of the community. In Himba culture, children learn not only through formal education but also through daily life and play. From a young age, they observe and participate in the tasks of the community, absorbing the traditions and skills they will need as adults. Education for Himba children often begins with storytelling. Elders pass down important lessons about their history, culture, and the environment. These stories help the children understand their identity and their role in the community. Play is also a vital part of childhood. Through games and activities, Himba children develop physical skills, social bonds, and a deeper understanding of their surroundings. Whether it's running barefoot across the dry earth or creating makeshift toys from natural materials, their play reflects the world around them. As they grow older, children begin to take on more responsibilities, learning by doing. They help with herding, collecting water, and other tasks, preparing for the roles they will take on as adults. For the Himba, education is a balance of knowledge, experience, and tradition. One of the most striking aspects of Himba culture is their beauty rituals, especially the application of red ochre. Both women and men use a mixture called a jais, made from butterfat and ochre, to cover their skin and hair. The red ochre is more than just a cosmetic choice. It holds cultural and symbolic meaning. For the Himba, the ochre symbolizes the earth, life, and blood, connecting them to their ancestors and the land they live on. It also protects their skin from the harsh sun and insect bites in the arid environment. Each morning, Himba women prepare the ochre paste by grinding the red rock and mixing it with butterfat, a ritual passed down from generation to generation. They apply the mixture to their entire body and hair, creating a distinctive red glow that defines their appearance. This ritual is not just an individual act but also a communal one. Women often gather to help one another with the intricate process of braiding their hair and applying the ochre, reinforcing the bonds of sisterhood and community. These beauty rituals are a vital part of Himba identity, blending tradition, beauty, and practical protection. The Himba people rely on trading as a vital part of their economy. While their lives are centered around cattle herding, many of their needs are met through barter at local markets. Here, the exchange of goods reflects not just economic transactions but also social bonds. At these markets, Himba women often bring handcrafted items like jewelry, animal skins, or clay pots, while others trade cattle products such as milk or butter. In exchange, they obtain grains, clothes, and other necessities that are not easily available in their villages. The act of trading is more than a simple exchange. It strengthens relationships between different communities and families. As they barter, there's a rhythm to the interaction, an unspoken language of respect and understanding. For the Himba, these markets are also an opportunity to connect socially. They catch up with friends and relatives from neighboring areas, sharing news, laughter, and stories. It's a vibrant moment where culture, community, and economy come together. As the day comes to an end, the Himba community gathers around the central fire pit, a place of warmth and connection. The fire, known as ochre, holds deep spiritual significance for the Himba people, representing the link between the living and their ancestors. The fire is never allowed to go out, as it symbolizes continuity and the presence of the ancestors. Each family has their own fire within the village, but the central fire pit is the heart of communal life. It's here that stories are told, knowledge is passed down, and decisions for the community are made. The elders take this time to share wisdom and ancient stories. As they speak, the younger generation listens carefully, learning about their history, the land, and the customs that define their identity. The fire provides both a literal and metaphorical warmth, binding the generations together. As night falls, the flickering flames light up the village, casting long shadows across the ground. The peaceful sounds of crackling wood mix with quiet conversation, creating a tranquil atmosphere. The Himba find strength in these shared moments, reaffirming their connection to each other and to those who came before them. One of the most important roles in the Himba community is the passing down of traditional skills to the younger generations. From an early age, children learn the customs, crafts, and values that have been handed down through countless generations. Whether it's learning how to tend to livestock, how to create intricate beaded jewelry, or how to build huts using local materials, these skills are a vital part of maintaining their cultural identity. Elders teach with patience, showing the children the meaning and importance behind each task. Boys often learn from the men how to care for the cattle, the lifeblood of the Himba people. It's not just about feeding or herding the animals, it's about understanding the symbiotic relationship between the Himba and their livestock, a connection that has sustained their way of life for centuries. Girls learn from the women how to grind maize, apply the symbolic red ochre paste, and maintain the household. These lessons are more than practical, they symbolize the continuity of their culture, as each generation absorbs the knowledge of those who came before them. Through these teachings, the Himba people ensure that their customs and traditions continue to thrive. As we wrap up this journey into the daily life and spirituality of the Himba people, we're reminded of their deep connection to tradition, community, and nature. The Himba's resilience and commitment to their ancestral ways offer a profound lesson on living in harmony with the environment and honoring the wisdom of the past. Their world is a blend of ancient customs and present-day resilience, revealing the strength in unity and respect for all forms of life. By embracing their story, we gain insight into a way of life that values balance, respect, and continuity. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Himba tribe. If you enjoyed exploring their world and culture, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a like. Your support helps us continue sharing these incredible stories from around the globe.